The Atlanta Braves continue to do a great job of improving the depth this offseason with the recent signing of Tyler Kinley. Is that enough for the bullpen, or is more needed?
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastroianni. Been covering the Atlanta Braves in both the written and podcast form for over 10 years now, and this is Locked On Braves, your daily connection to all things Atlanta Braves. And this is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Tyler Kinley signing. Does that mean the bullpen is now complete? Should it be? And I have part 2 of my conversation with CJ. We're going to get into a lot of different topics on today's episode, which is brought to you by FanDuel. The wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Well, like I said, on today's episode, I want to get into the Tyler Kinley signing, but I also have part 2 of my episode, or my conversation with CJ, which we'll get into later in the podcast. But let's start out talking about the signing for Tyler Kinley that happened over the weekend. A 1-year, $4.25 million contract for the relief pitcher to bring him back. Now he'll be making $3 million in 2025, and then they have a $5.5 million team option for 2027 with a $1.25 million buyout. The Braves had declined his $5.5 million team option for 2025, which gave him a $750,000 buyout, which was confusing and surprising at the time, considering how good he was after the Braves traded for him at the deadline. But they do save a little bit of money on this, and you get an extra potential year of him as well. Now, the buyout is more significant in the second year, but I think this is overall a great deal for the Atlanta Braves. Again, you save a little bit of money, especially on the 2026 payroll, and you get another year of control over him at a really reasonable price, especially if he does what he did last year, and a not too significant buyout that you would have to pay him if things just completely fall apart. So a good move, a move that just always made sense. We talked about it. It felt like they were going to bring back either Pierce Johnson or Tyler Kinley after seeing how things played out and seeing how things have played out. I think it made a lot of sense to decline both of those guys to make sure you have all the resources available to you, all the money allocated to you that you need, and then just kind of see how things go from there. And the Braves had enough money left to still go out and get a Tyler Kinley. Maybe they have enough left to go out and get a Pierce Johnson if they want to as well. And we'll get into that in a second if the bullpen should be done. But let's talk about Tyler Kinley here for a second and why the Atlanta Braves wanted to bring him back. We've talked a lot about this, and CJ, who you're going to get later on this podcast and was on the podcast last week, he sent out a post with a good graphic talking about the usage of that slider from Colorado to Atlanta last year. And the slider usage went up 15%, very similar to what they did with Pierce Johnson going from Colorado to Atlanta and really taking up his curveball usage. They did something similar with Tyler Kinley, and he had great results. Now, the whip rate on the slider stayed pretty much the same, or was the same, identical, 33% in Colorado, 33% in Atlanta. He was just throwing it a lot more. And the batting average went down significantly in Atlanta, although it was still really good in Colorado. So that slider is a great pitch for him, and the Braves just leaned heavily into that. Now, again, as the question we've had for Pierce Johnson, how far can you go with just leaning on that one pitch? But I think the even more important thing to realize, and CJ pointed this out in his post on social media, is the walk rate went from 12.6% in Colorado to 6.4% in Atlanta. That's a huge difference in walk rate. And so you start using your best pitch more, you start throwing more strikes, you start walking fewer batters. It's going to lead to the results that we saw Tyler Kinley get. Now, can he reproduce that in Atlanta? I wouldn't exactly be counting on that. I would not be counting on the guy that Tyler Kinley was the second half of last year after the Braves traded for him. He has a career walk rate of 8.4%, but you look at the walk rates for Tyler Kinley in his career. First 2 to 3 years, it was up over 10%. And then his first 3 years actually in Colorado were around 6 to 8%, which is, normal, what you would likely see. And then the last 2 years, 2025 included, his walk rate was up over 10%. And so he's been able to throw strikes in the past and limit the walks. And you might have thought, my initial thought was, okay, well, sometimes pitchers talk about how in Colorado, they don't always know where some of their pitches are going. And maybe that was the problem. And he got out of Colorado and he was just able to better command his pitches because he had a better idea of where they were going. But he's had good walk rates in Colorado. So I can't really pinpoint the issue for the walk rates in the past, but it got significantly better coming to Atlanta. And if that continues and he continues to throw that slider more, it would not be surprising to see him continue to be a really good reliever. Now he's 34 years old. This is not, some young pitcher, relief pitcher that you're going to have for a while. But again, if he can duplicate some of that success that he had last season, he's going to be a solid middle relief option and potentially somebody that can be a setup option at points during the year. If somebody were to get injured or if somebody were to regress or somebody's just tired, you could use Tyler Kinley in the 6th, 7th, 8th inning. A lot of times, definitely the 6th inning, but more so in the 7th and 8th innings, what I'm talking about, like the Braves did at the end of last year when he was one of their best relievers. So I think this is a great deal. And you look at the bullpen picture now, and you have Iggy, you have Suarez as your main 2 guys, and then I would even group Dylan Lee in there as your main 3 guys that you want to use in the 7th, 8th, 9th inning. Those are the guys you want to go to with a lead. And then behind them, I think you have a group of Tyler Kinley, Aaron Bummer, and then potentially somebody that you move from the rotation like a Grant Holmes or a Reynaldo López. And then I think you finish it out with guys who are trying to rebound like a Joel Payamps, an Ian Hamilton, a James Karinchak. You also have some long relief types like a Joey Wentz, a Dylan Dodd, which, by the way, Dylan Dodd does have an option left. Fangraphs have reported at the end of last year that he was out of options, but now they're reporting he did qualify for an extra option year. So that's good news on Dylan Dodd as the Braves can maintain that control over him for another year and that flexibility that he has. And then you had the young guys, Daysbull, Carlos Lara, Hayden Harris. So, and then we don't know what we're going to get from Joe Jimenez. I'm not expecting anything at the moment, but maybe we do get something from him. And then you have Danny Young coming back from Tommy John surgery. So the bullpen seems to be pretty deep. Now, I will say there aren't a ton of guys after Iggy Suarez Lee that I'm completely confident in. Again, I need to see more from Kinley other than what we just saw the second half of last year. If Holmes or López went to the bullpen, we've seen López succeed in that role before, and so I feel more confident in that. But there are certainly some question marks after the top 3 in the bullpen still. But I think this is a very solid bullpen if you were to go into the season with this group. And it has some guys at the back end there, the Hamiltons, the Karinchak, the Payamps, guys who have been good in the past that, if just one of them really kind of figures it out and rebounds, then you're looking at, another potential setup piece for your bullpen. So I'm really happy with where the bullpen is. Again, I still think it will take a guy from the rotation getting bumped to the bullpen to really give it, a great grade. But I do think the top 3 are there, and I think you now have a core behind them to back them up in Kinley, Bummer, and then either Holmes or López. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. All right, in the rest of today's podcast, you're going to get part 2 of my conversation with CJ Nitkowski. If you missed part 1 from last week, please go back and give that a listen. On today's episode, I'm going to get CJ's thoughts on the offseason overall and just kind of the slower pace for a lot of these top agents, although we did see Alex Bregman sign over the weekend to the Chicago Cubs. We're also going to talk about CJ's IMDb page. If you didn't know this, CJ, a little bit of a role as an actor on TV shows and stuff like that, so a little bit of fun there. Also asked him for his advice on those looking to get into the broadcast media space. A lot of you asked me some of those questions. I know a lot of you are in that area as well, so that'll be very interesting. And then I asked him who he's most excited to see in spring training. So that's what's coming up on the rest of today's episode of Locked On Braves. The wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boost you want to apply. You make your picks, then apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. You can see the latest odds and lines right now on FanDuel.com. They have the wild card specials out there. There's a couple of more here as I'm recording on Sunday and on Monday, so plenty of time to get in on that. Or, you're like me, you're already looking forward to baseball season. They have your World Series odds out there. The Braves in the top 5 right now to win the World Series. We'll see if that gets boosted a little bit with the Cubs signing of Alex Bregman, but you can see all that and the changes all of those World Series odds there at FanDuel.com. Also, please make sure you visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and make sure you grab your Profit Boost Pack every NFL playoff game day. Thank you for making Locked On Braves your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you're a true diehard Braves fan, the Everydayer All Access tier is built for you. You'll get one-on-one text access with me, all access episodes, an exclusive newsletter, and a 15% discount to the Locked On merch store. Head to lockedonbraves.supercast.com to join the Everydayer program and unlock all access. You can also find the link in the show notes. Next, I wanted to get your just thoughts on the offseason in general. I know you focus on the Braves a lot, but you also have a show on the MLB Network where you're talking about all the teams in the offseason. What are your thoughts on the way this offseason has played out? There are still so many big-time free agents out there. What's your reasoning for that? Do you think it has anything to do with the upcoming CBA, maybe some larger market teams being not as comfortable giving out long-term contracts? You think it's just the way the offseason's played out? What is your take on the way the offseason has unfolded so far?
I think with the top free agents that are out there, there's some really good ones, right? You look at the top 15 or so, there's a bunch of those guys that are still available. I think the fact that they have multiple suitors has probably slowed things down. The Blue Jays came in and were very decisive on who they wanted. And you could argue that they may have overpaid for those guys, but they were willing to do that because they identified who they wanted. I mentioned Dylan Cease earlier. Right, so you give Dylan Cease $210 million, and maybe those 7 years go amazing. It's certainly possible. He generates swing and miss again as good as anybody in our game, and he makes his starts. That was a very aggressive play early on. The money that they gave to Rogers, and I'm happy for him. Love seeing relievers get paid. That feels like a big time overpay, right? He was estimated. His projections were like 2 for 18, and he got a 3 for 37, I believe. Mm-hmm. Like he got I'd say way overpaid, but good for him. And even Nakamoto, who comes over from Japan. Right, ends up getting $60 million when Murakami, who was a lot younger, goes to the White Sox on a 2-year deal for 34. So I bring them up because I think they were aggressive. They identified who they wanted. They went and got those guys. I think when you look at Alex Bregman as an example, Kyle Tucker, they have multiple suitors, and all their suitors are big markets for the most part, or at least have money to spend. I think he wants to go back to Boston. I think it's probably the best fit for him. I think at one point the Blue Jays were involved, and now that they have Akamoto, probably not. He's going to be their third baseman going forward, so it does take a team off the table. But I think the Cubs are probably still poking around. The Arizona Diamondbacks have become players apparently in the third base market. So you have him, you have Eugenio Suarez, and I mentioned teams like the Cubs and the Tigers and others. So I think there's just a lot of suitors. And remember, Bregman last year, I don't think signed till right before we got to spring training or even into it, right? So I think for him, knowing that if he wants that longer guaranteed deal, he's going to push, he's going to wait it out. Kyle Tucker, I think same kind of thing. We haven't heard hardly anything. Like insiders haven't said much of anything about him, which is surprising. We did miss some time last year. I think every guy always has something that doesn't make him a clear cut for teams to say, do I want to make this full commitment? Even at Ranger Suarez, who I love, like I mentioned, with him, 157 innings, that's his career high. I think he made 27 starts once, right? As good as he is and as much of a thorn in the side he's been to the Atlanta Braves, he has never been a 32 start, 185, 195 innings pitch guy, right? That's a caveat when you're sitting here trying to put a contract together and what makes sense. So I do think that's why it takes a little bit more time. Framber Valdez, I do love all the speculation with Martin Maldonado now being involved here with the Braves. Does that mean maybe they're in on Framber? I'll take Framber. But the thing with Framber is what happened last year with the cross up. Is that something real? We know how big Alex is on what he brings into the clubhouse and any team. And it's not just Braves related, but I think everybody is probably looking at that a little bit and trying to get as much information and do their due diligence and make that tough decision. But he's really good, and he's been really good, and he's been really consistent. So I think that's why you have that there. Zach Gallen was not Zach Gallen last year, and he's got a qualifying offer attached to him. That's a big one. Lucas Giolito finished the season hurt, not going back to Boston, but he's another really good starting pitcher that is out there. So the reliever market was probably the easiest to read for teams just based on how it went. I think the top dogs, both starting pitchers and position players, a little bit harder to read. It's definitely been a slow trickle. I look at it two ways. Like I know everyone talks about, we like to have NBA style free agency. I wouldn't, at least not while I'm doing radio, because I like that it drags out. Now it does get really slow. It's been very slow. And there's times where we're repeating segments from the day before because there's just not a lot going on. But I do like that there's always that chance at news every week and even into, I don't love getting into spring training and big guys not being signed, but it happens. And then some guys do really well. Like Nick Pivetta and the Padres last year, as late as that was a great deal for them. And I think teams maybe see that and say, how long can we wait a guy out? Because the Pivetta contract was super beneficial to the San Diego Padres. They were a surprise team there to make it happen, but they got the most bang for their buck.
Yeah, and it just, I mean, I had almost forgot about Kyle Tucker, and you mentioned it. I'm like, yeah, God, we haven't heard anything on Kyle Tucker. It's
nothing.
It really has been an interesting offseason to see all these top free agents. We're into January now, and nothing has really happened for a lot of them. Tucker, Bregman, Cody Bellinger. I mean, it's always just kind of felt like he's going to go back to the Yankees, but the Yankees and Cubs involved in him. I mean, and then all the starting
picking up a little bit
still out there.
Yeah, so, Bellinger's been the guy we're hearing more about, right? I think it sounds like the Yankees went back for a second offer. He has a lot of suitors, man, because he can still play multiple positions. I don't think people necessarily look at him as a guy that they'd want at first, but it's left field, it's center field. He can play first if you need him to. He fits in a lot of places for a lot of teams that have money. And this is, he's 30 years old, right? So this is kind of his big spot, his big opportunity if he wants to do the long-term kind of guaranteed, at least without opt-outs for a couple of years, at least, if not without him at all. And there's some teams that I think really need him in a bad way. I know Ken Rosenthal talked about it earlier about, the Yankees maybe needing him the most. And I may agree that they might need him the most because other teams that might be in on Tucker. The one thing that's interesting about Tucker with these other teams that might be in on him is a lot of them have right fielders. Is he okay going back and playing left field? It's been a minute. You put him with the Mets, he's got to play left field, right? You put him with the Yankees, he's got to play left field. You got Aaron Judge and you got Juan Soto. He could go play right field in Toronto. And I think that's why this is all kind of working out the way that it is. And Bo Bichette, we didn't even mention Bo Bichette. And you said it earlier, probably going to be, he's told teams he's willing to play second. I haven't heard anything about third for him. But, there's a lot of teams where he fits in as well.
Yeah. So still a lot of news to come. You got plenty to talk about there on Loud Outs on the MLB Network radio. So looking forward to that the rest of the offseason. Hopefully there's still another big surprise one in here for Braves fans to talk about. I want to kind of shift gears a little bit here because I was checking out your about section on social media. And if you haven't done so, I encourage you to go to CJ's page on X.
I kind of forgot that was there.
Click on the view more here. Very interesting stuff here. I didn't realize all the things you had done here. So 6-time Emmy Award winner and 11-time nominee. I mean,
not to give those to anybody. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, 27-time husband of the year. That's obviously a good one in there. I've heard you mention this on the broadcast before too. The New York Mets all-time ERA leader. Minimum 5 games inning pitch. Got to put that in there as well. And then you also share the record for most consecutive hit batters. That's a special one too.
So that's an actual real one. That record is real, which I didn't know until when obviously at the time, and it was awful. The last guy I hit, it was in Miami in 1998. It was raining during the game, and I ended up hitting Craig Counsell in the face, and I broke his jaw. And ended his season. It was awful, and I felt terrible. And I called him the next day and apologized. I was trying to run a 2-seamer in on him, right? You remember him? He kind of leaned out over the plate, covered the outside part of the plate well. So I tried to back him off. We were having a long at bat, and obviously there was guys on base because I hit the previous 2 guys, and there was a base hit in there too. So I had bases loaded, nobody out, and I just didn't throw the pitch with conviction, and it ran, and it caught him in the jaw, and he was bleeding, and he lost a tooth. And for a while, he was a regular guest with us on my radio show. We have the managerial spots, and he was once a week, and he's a straight shooter. And like I said, I called him and apologized the next day, and we never talked about it again. It's 1998. A couple of years ago, he's on our show, and we're about to ask him first question, and this is when he was managing in Milwaukee. He goes, "Hey, real quick, you mind if I say something real quick?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course, whatever you want." He goes, I was thinking about CJ today." And I was like, "Oh, what?" Like, that was weird, right? He goes, "Yeah, I had to go visit my dentist because it had been 25 years since I had my tooth knocked out and I had to replace it. And so I was getting my tooth replaced today, and I was laying in a dentist chair thinking about CJ. And I was like, I felt awful all over again. I felt like it was 1998. But he was good about it. He had fun with it. But it is a record. And actually, I've had, since I got it in 98, I had 3 teammates tie it. Steve Sparks, Javier Vasquez, and Jeff Weaver all hit 3 guys in a row after that. It hadn't happened since 1976. There was only a handful of guys. There might have been 4 or 5 guys that had done it. And then I had 3 teammates do it after me.
There's probably a conversation in there about pitchers versus throwers now, maybe. I don't know. Something in there.
I never had good command.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's got to be obviously getting hit in the face. We've seen it happen before, Hayward, Charlie Culberson, like we've seen it many times before. It's Kevin Pillar, the Braves, somebody from the Braves hit Kevin Pillar too. So it's it's obviously not great for those guys, but I always think about the pitchers too. Like, it's not intentional and you know how bad they feel about that.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. I
And
didn't
real
know
quick,
you did that. Yeah, go ahead.
and what it was nice on that too, I say nice, but I wish, of course, it never happened. So the next day I'm there, I'm feeling awful. Jim Leland was managing the Marlins at the time, and he'd come over to our dugout. And to your point, was looking for me, knew that it was unintentional, and actually wanted to check on me. And I was like, "Did I just knock Craig Counsell out for the rest of the season for you?" And here this guy is. They're just checking in to make sure I'm all right, and I can get back on the mound, which I had to again the next night, not the next night, but the next after. I had to face Edgar Renteria, and it was Miami, so the crowd wasn't bad, but I was getting booed like crazy. But it was nice. It was nice that Jim Leland. You hear about what a great guy, covers Hall of Fame manager. That's the only time I ever interacted with him, but I was real appreciative of even the fact that he would think about it.
Yeah, no, that's really cool from Jim Leland there. The thing that caught me most off guard reading your bio here says you played the role of Dutch Leonard in the Jackie Robinson biopic 42, which is a movie I love and enjoy, and also were part of the Fox TV show Pitch, which me and my wife used to watch. So I didn't know you were in the movie and TV business as well. I guess I know you're in the TV business.
Yeah,
that type
not
of
the real TV
drama.
business.
Yeah,
not on purpose. Yeah, I was working for FS1 at the time my career started. I did 1 year freelance, and then I was fortunate to land a gig at FS1. Doing studio work with them. So I was kind of right place at right time when they launched this show. And Eric Shanks, who is the king of Volcano over at Fox Sports, actually recommended me to some Fox movie or Fox TV people as someone that could maybe help out as a script consultant. And so I had met with the producers and it ended up working out. And it was a great gig, man. It was only 10 episodes, unfortunately. But essentially this job was, they could call you and you basically would call them back and walk them through any dialogue to help them make it sound right. Right. So you're just a script consultant to make sure that, when you watch some sports movies that doesn't sound right or that's not right. And there was a couple of times that they still kind of went with the way they wanted to go because they just felt like it fit better than what they were trying to accomplish. But they would ask a lot about certain things and just, how would this look? How would this sound? Does this make sense? Kind of thing. And then I actually had a cameo in it as well, which the highlight for me there. I know I'm a lot older than you are, but if
Zach?
you ever watched Saved by the Saved by the Bell, so played the catcher in Mark Paul Gosselaar, right, played the catcher in the movie. We had the scene that I did was actually with him. He was, this kind of old grizzled catcher was the idea. You have a girl who's trying to be the first big league pitcher and he's bringing her along. Well, he was hurt. And so he was sitting on the desk for the All-Star broadcast. It was, we're doing like an All-Star studio show. So I got to do a scene with him where he was to my left on the desk in Fox Studios. And we're all kind of baseball analysts, which was really cool. So meeting him was awesome because I grew up a huge Saved by the Bell guy. So that was really neat.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna ask you because I also grew up on Saved by the Bell too. So I was gonna see if you got a chance to meet him. So that's
reruns for you though. I think I was watching the originals.
Yeah, probably. Probably. Yeah, so that's really cool. So I didn't know that about you. I didn't know you had an IMDb page there. So I went and checked you out, was researching you a little bit earlier today. And with that too, though, and kind of a little bit more of a serious note, after ending obviously your playing career, you went right into broadcasting, and you've done several different roles in broadcasting. I get questions on here a lot from guys asking my thoughts on getting into broadcasting. Obviously a lot of it podcasting now. What would kind of be some of your recommendations for anybody maybe looking to get into TV broadcasting career?
So I would say writing is a big one. And I recommend often to start a blog. And if nobody reads it, don't worry about it. Be consistent with it. I think there's something about finding your voice through writing that can help you get there. I was a terrible English student. I did really poorly on the SAT and the verbal part of the SAT, and I hate reading and still kind of hate reading, to be honest with you. Not as much as I did as a kid, but never was a strength of mine. And what's funny about that is then when I was still playing, the AP actually asked me, Associated Press asked me if I would write some stories from Japan when I was over there, just to help kind of share the experience. And I might have done a dozen articles for them. And so I started kind of not even realizing it, but started finding my voice through writing. And I get quote, my son actually brought this up the other day because he saw something on the internet that went by. He goes, "Hey, Dad," he goes, "You were the first MLB player ever to have your own website." And it was kind of accidental, but I did. In 1997, I started one. And so I would blog and kind of get behind the scenes stuff, which now is the most common thing you see all the time, but it didn't exist in the late 90s. That kind of writing and sharing experiences for me, I think really kind of helped me find my voice and the way that I want to talk about baseball and the way things kind of developed for me. So I'm a big proponent of writing, finding a way. What you're doing, I think podcasting, even if you don't get an audience, is a great way to get reps in, to get comfortable in front of a camera, right? To sit here and look at a camera and talk, I think is one of the more difficult things to do, right? Like when I'm doing radio, even though we're on Zoom with each other, we're not on camera. And when I'm doing games, we're generally not on camera. And I'm kind of looking around and looking stuff up all the time. But to actually look into a lens and talk, man, like that was one of the biggest challenges I ran into when I first started out. So the idea now of the technology that we have to be able to do a podcast, building an audience is nice and you've done an excellent job, but just get the reps in and really start to find yourself. If you want to get into the actual broadcasting of games, and I got this recommendation from somebody, I think it's a really good idea. Bring a tape recorder. You don't need a tape recorder anymore. Bring your phone, go sit in the upper deck and call the game. Call the game play by play so that you have that nat sound and the excitement of what's going on in the ballpark, and practice some more and then practice some more. I think it's really important for play by play guys to be able to do as many sports as possible. I was having a conversation the other day with the sideline reporter who was asking me some similar questions about getting in. And I said, the more sports you can do, the better. Even if you know that you love baseball, just getting your foot in the door, especially if you're in college, right? There's lots of opportunities for college broadcasts. That's one way to do it. I'm different because I'm in the analyst chair and I'm only qualified to analyze one sport, and that's baseball. And that's the only shot I have. But for everybody else, like, if you want to be play by play or you want to be a reporter, do as many sports as you possibly can. And practice in any way that you can. But sitting in the upper deck, maybe with some notes on an iPad or whatever it may be, go practice calling a game with the crowd noise behind you. That's a great way to get some reps.
Yeah, I think that's some great advice there. I know I've heard Brandon talk about it as well, just kind of his journey, and all the places that he's been an announcer in sports that he's announced for. I think too, I started out as a writer. I was a journalism major at Auburn. And so I started out writing too in blogs, various blogs throughout the years before I turned over to the podcast thing. And then also Vinny Rotino, who does, an analyst over for FanDuel, Wisconsin, whatever it's called now. Yeah, he when I started on FanDuel, I started out on Locked On Brewers because there was the Locked On Braves spot was taken at that time, and he did several shows with me because he wanted to get some reps in, before he started that job there. And so, I think that's a good call too. Just getting those reps in, getting in front of the camera, especially doing on a podcast like this. Like I'm pressing all the buttons, I'm doing all this, and so you're having to learn how to multitask and do all that at the same time. So definitely some good advice there. I know a lot of my listeners very interested in that.
Madman, man. Like my first year, right? So I threw my last pitch in January 2013. I was fortunate to get some opportunities that year. MLB.com, which doesn't exist the way it once did, but they actually had like TV studios and they did a lot of internet stuff. And I was able to get some work there. I was doing college games. And now there's more college baseball on TV than ever. Yeah. College games are a great way to break in. They're really hard, and I follow a little bit of college baseball, and I have a son that's going to be playing next year, college baseball. So I've paid even closer attention, but those games are way harder to do because there's less crowd. You don't know the backstories nearly as well. And I remember doing them thinking, gosh, it'd be a lot easier to do a big league game than it would be a college game. But that's another great opportunity for reps. And there's more college baseball now on TV than ever.
Yeah. So good stuff there from CJ. Again, if you haven't checked out his About page on his X channel, I'd encourage you to go do so. Let's wrap things up here a little bit, though. Looking forward, CJ, who are you most interested in seeing in spring training as a Braves player?
Ooh. There's a lot. It's hard to just pick one because there's different things we're going to be looking for from everybody. I do think what Spencer Strider is bringing to the table, if there's anything new. Remember when we learned about the curveball? It was my first year 2 years ago. He didn't announce it. He didn't say, hey, heads up, I got a new pitch. All of a sudden I'm watching him throw a bullpen, and I never watched him live. Actually, it was live BP, and I never watched him live like that before. And I'm like, I thought it was fastball slider. Like that definitely was a curveball. We had to figure it out on our own. I think there's always something up his sleeve, potentially. So he's for sure going to be a guy where there's all eyes on him. I haven't looked in a couple of days, but last time I looked, Ronald was 11 for 11 in stolen bases in winter ball. He only had 9 last year in the big leagues. If it appears that his legs are feeling really good. So we'll certainly be keeping an eye on that. Of course, we're watching everything that he is doing, but clearly he's comfortable. He's crushing the baseball in winter ball, but also he's running really well. So that's encouraging. We keep an eye on that one. I think making sure everyone's healthy, of course, all the guys that were hurt last year and has to look both position players and pitchers is going to be a big one. There's always going to be somebody that is maybe bringing something new to the table that you weren't anticipating, somebody kind of working on that new pitch and that storyline. We don't know what it's going to be. We'll find out when we get there. But I can't wait, man. We'll have, I think, and there's a lot going on right now, but I think it's still going to be the same as last year where there's 14 games for spring training that are broadcast on television. So that'll be 10 on Gray and 4 on FanDuel. So I'll look forward to that. Most teams, don't do that many. When I was with the Rangers, we do like 3 or 4. So the fact that we'll have, 14 will be a lot more time spent down in Northport. So we'll get a lot longer look at guys. But it's going to be hard not to be most curious about Spencer Strider's fastball.
Yeah, that was the number one thing for me. What does Strider look like? Because the outcomes can vary so much, right? I mean, he can get back certainly to being that Cy Young type of dominant pitcher. I truly believe that. And with the offseason, and I wanted to circle back. Sorry, one more follow-up question. When you talked about Jeremy Hefner and seeing that arm angle, had he spoken to, or was that a conscious decision by Strider, or do you know that was Strider even aware of that?
I don't. And I know that I think it was up to Spencer. None of that data would be available publicly, right? Because he's always working on something. I mean, I think he enjoys the conversations that are challenging, but I think also if you're working on something or something changes, he doesn't necessarily always want to let the cat out of the bag and kind of keeps it close to the vest, which I respect, right? So I don't even mind trying to figure it out on my own. So I don't know how they got there. I don't know if there was any intent. It's a good question, though. And certainly we're going to have Jeremy Hefner on headset for a game, and we'll talk to him, I'm sure, in spring training, but we'll talk to him a bunch anyway, and just to get an idea. But it's a good question. And I know that, man, our writing core has gotten a little bit lighter with no Dave O'Brien and no Justin. And so we'll have to push Mark Bowman. Every once in a while, I'll put something in his ear of a question that I'm not as comfortable asking because I got to get on the team plane. So I'll throw it out to him and say, hey, why don't you ask so-and-so this? Not that he always does it. But if I have something, I'll throw it his way as well. But it's a good question. I don't know the answer to it, but I'm as curious as you are.
Yeah, it'll be very exciting to see Strider and what he looks like in spring training. The rest of these guys come back from injury. I mean, Schwellenbach coming back. Riley we haven't seen in a while. Isley obviously ended the season injured once again with another hand-wrist injury. So a lot of guys that can't wait to see in spring training, can't wait to get there. I wish you guys could do all of the games on TV as fans. We just want it all, but it is getting better and better and getting more and more. So certainly thankful for that. And CJ, thankful for you coming on the podcast, taking a lot of your time here. So I appreciate you doing that. If you haven't already, make sure, again, you're following CJ on social at CJ Nitkowski. Don't spell it like Jeff Rancourt does. It's Nitkowski. And a lot of good stuff. You can also listen to CJ on Loud Outs on MLB Network Radio from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern. And he has his drive-in podcast. I don't know if you do it as much during the offseason. I feel like I've seen it a couple times. Yeah, definitely during the season, though. It gets you ready for the game.
So I'll give you something to get mad at me about. Maybe not you, but for Braves fans. So like I try to, if I feel like it's called for, I was on vacation. I guess it was when Kim signed. I don't do a lot of vacations, but I happened to be out of the country.
Yeah, I think that's the one I must have seen then. I saw
and probably the last one that I had up there. So I was like, of course I'll do these when stuff happens. But I hung out with Darren O'Day, Ben Ingram, and Jonathan Chadwick. Of course, Jonathan Chadwick produces all the games on the radio side, and we had hung out, went to the shooting range, and I was like, man, I got all you guys here together. And Ben was driving. I was like, I need to do a drive-in podcast on the ride back. And they're like, yeah, that's fine. And I just couldn't pull the trigger. We'd stopped off at like a local butcher of mine to pick up some steaks and some other stuff and whatnot. And it was only about a 15-minute ride. And we hadn't seen each other a ton, so we were doing a lot more catching up. And I even had I brought my little mics with me just in case. And then we ended up getting to my house, and they're like, hey, what happened, man? I thought we were going to do a podcast. I was like, I don't know, man. I just couldn't pull the trigger. So I shouldn't even say that. But what it does now is it gets me to the point where I'm going to force myself to get something done before we get to spring training. So I had them all in one spot, and I didn't pull the trigger. Probably
some good opportunities there in spring training. That'll be some good content because, like I said, as Rays fans, especially in the doldrums of spring training, I know for players, certainly, especially position players, out the first couple of weeks, you're just ready to play. Although we got the World Baseball Classic this year, so that'll keep things interesting too. But yeah, it'll be good to get some of that content once you get down to spring training. So CJ, once again, thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate your insight. Can't wait to hear you and Brandon back broadcasting Braves games. Can't wait to get back to the season. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Jake.
Thanks for tuning in to Locked On Braves. We'll be back on Wednesday with another episode, and then on Friday as well with our weekly mailbag episode. So looking to a normal podcast week. We are down to 3 episodes a week right now. We'll pull it back to, or bring it back to 5 episodes a week starting in February as we get closer to spring training. It's coming. Cannot wait for it to get here. You can find me on Twitter at shortstopball. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves on X. We're also on Instagram and TikTok. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube if you're new. Hit that thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. Again, thanks for listening to Locked On Braves, making this your first listen of the day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day. And one more time, make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And we will talk to you next time.